All right.
All right.
It's 1:15. Let's get this party started.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So yeah, welcome. Obviously, I wish we could be together in person. This is very strange. I was telling Brian, I'm not experiencing all of the healthy anxiety you should have in public speaking. So it's very odd. I wish I could see faces and we could talk and chat and all of that. But anyways, I'm glad that you're here. And so without further ado, we'll jump into your component library is not a design system. So first, a couple of items of note. We are going to try and take questions at the end. We should have time for that. So if you have a question, put into the chat with a Q : in front of it or something like that, so we can clearly see it's a question. We can scroll back through at the end and look for those. And then also, we are sharing a couple of screens. One is the presentation, of course, and then one is a screen that has a link to the slides, so that you, in case you have trouble watching us go through those, you can hop off and go look at those on your own screen. And then we also put that in the chat. It's way up at the top now, but it's in there in the chat. So yeah, let's jump right in. All right, so yeah, my name is Evan Wilhite. I'm a senior front-end engineer at Four Kitchens, and I'm based out of the Nashville, Tennessee area, and I am an Emulsify project lead.
And I'm Brian Lewis. I'm a front-end engineer at Four Kitchens. I live in Wichita, Kansas, and I'm also an Emulsify project lead.
So yeah, when it comes to design systems these days, words are definitely hard. We are in the midst of a period of time where terms are actually being defined in the public consciousness, similar to a decade ago with responsive design. Folks in the design system space literally have glossary sections on their websites right now, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about it because the concepts are well formed. So let's get some terminology out of the way. So what do we mean when we talk about a component library? Well, at Four Kitchens, we use the term component library for this part of the design system we're about to discuss because it signifies to the widest audience what this piece is. But for developers or designers, a better description might be project scaffolding, because what we are referring to as a component library is more than just a group of organized components. It's also a UI workshop for building and sharing those components, and a build system to process and stream and minify, et cetera, all the things as you work. So this is what Emulsify has historically been and still contains, but let's take a look at these three pieces in the new Emulsify. So first, let's talk about the UI workshop and build system. So if you're familiar with Emulsify's history, you may be asking why these tools in particular. Well, from a high level, they have incredible support. So Storybook lists 900 plus committers, 6.6 million plus monthly installs. Webpack 600 plus committers and over 35 million monthly downloads. Plus they have rich ecosystems. So Storybook has an add-ons ecosystem where you can use a lot of plugins on your project that are specific to your project. You can write add-ons yourself. And then Webpack, of course, is built around the concept of plugins. So both of those ecosystems are massively rich at this point. Also, they use each other. So it helps us keep the tools as minimal and extendable as possible, because Storybook leverages Webpack, and when we leverage it, we can combine those things and use them together. And then finally, there's the components themselves. So Four Kitchens is obviously deeply invested in Drupal, so naturally Twig is a first-class citizen in Emulsify. In fact, there is a starter kit project called Emulsify Drupal, which replaces the old Emulsify, and it ties these three pieces together: Storybook, Webpack, and Twig, ready-made as a Drupal theme, a Drupal 8 theme, Drupal 8 and 9. So this is what replaces the old Emulsify. But here's the cool part: because of this tool chain with Storybook and Webpack, we've now opened ourselves to enormous possibilities. So the landscape is growing, and we all know it. Even within the Drupal community, there is a massive focus on the flexibility of tooling, particularly on the front end. And because of this choice of Storybook and Webpack, we get support for all of these built in, and many others I haven't listed. And in case you're not up with your language icons I'm showing here, React and Vue and Angular, Ember, HTML, and WordPress. And those are just a few of the languages that Storybook just supports. So pretty cool, right? So that's the component library side, and we have that well in hand. So what's left to talk about? Well, of course, design systems. So component libraries equal happy developers, or maybe if you're lucky, a happy production team where developers and designers are now on the same page. But what we found at 4Kitchens is that no amount of component-driven development, shared tooling, or UI workshops can guarantee long-term success by only making that team happy, that production team. Long-term success requires full buy-in from all teams across the organization. So it requires buy-in from content strategy, the ones who decide what components should go where and how to populate them. From UX, a team that also cares about how and where components are used, as well as whether those components are meeting their success criteria. From accessibility and compliance, are these components usable by underserved audiences? And then testing and QA, the team who fights for component usage to be documented well and components to be versioned. From project managers and product owners, the stewards of project success and budget. And then on a higher level, marketing, who decides where the entire project fits into the big picture of brand success, and stakeholders, those with the highest vision for that success. So this is why a component library is not a design system. So what is a design system? Well, let's start by looking at an organization. So 4Kitchens does a lot of work in higher education. So allow me to introduce you to the completely fake Western University of Pennsylvania, a prestigious fake university who in its rich 300+ year history has risen to the highest levels of academic rigor. Obviously, at that level, they have a strong core brand identity, one that must be shared and upheld by its many schools. Schools like the amazing College of Studio Arts, or as it is known around the world, the RISD of the Keystone State. And of course, you can imagine there are obviously a number of other schools as well in an organization of this size. And we can't make fake logos for all of them. But anyways, let's talk about the organizational needs. So what are the needs of a top-level organization? So here's a few: brand consistency and having a clear identity. Documentation, the ability to tell everyone in the organization how to tell that story across all products. The organization's web property or properties, so there may be multiple, including internal. And of course, costs, so keeping costs down across the entire organization. And these are just a few of the needs at this level. And finally, we listed accessibility because more than ever, there's a vested interest in guaranteeing accessibility across an entire organization, including its properties. So what are the property needs? So likely they have their own unique brand identity, like we're showing here with the Studio Arts College. And they're going to need their own web property. But they're also going to be interested in staying within the university's budget, the organization's budget, and in maintaining the organization's branding and accessibility consistently. So a good design system not only speaks to multiple audiences, it addresses both of these levels, the top level organization and all of the individual properties. So let's take a look at the ingredients to a design system that will address these needs. So a good design system begins with the living style guide. Unfortunately, this is one of those terms that requires a little bit of definition these days. So how we are using it, this is not a component library. It's not Storybook, it's not Pattern Lab, etc. So those are what Brad Frost calls the workshop. And what we're talking about here is what he calls the storefront. So the style guide is the authoritative source for all teams to document what, again, Brad describes as the official story of how your organization designs and builds digital products. Next, a good design system obviously also includes component libraries like we just talked about, but not just one, but many. You're going to have the global organizational components, and you're going to have each property's components. And then, of course, it's going to involve a smart, cost-effective workflow around all of these things. It involves sharing what needs to be shared between properties, so components and documentation, and then aligning efforts across multiple teams. So as a concrete example, if a new component is created and blessed by the production team, its usage will need to then be documented by content strategy. its success measured by UX, testing run by QA, etc. So not only do you need technical workflows around sharing that design and code, but also organizational workflows for distributing and codifying it. But let's dig even further into these three columns. And let's use our fake client, Western University of Pennsylvania, as an example. So they need a style guide, like we just talked about, a place to document guidelines around many things, including branding, colors, accessibility, typography, voice, and tone. Those are just a few things you typically find in a style guide. That documentation needs to include organizational components, but not just the component design and code, but also content for a variety of audiences, like instructions around the multiple component variations, their usage, their look and feel, any assets related to the component. And then, of course, the key for a style guide is that it needs to be easy to find, easy to digest, and easy to update. And what about the component libraries at this design system level? So at this level, we need to be able to create organizational components that can be used across all properties. So if we do this, we can reap all the benefits of component-driven development, except scaled across multiple projects. So benefits like a single source of truth for a component, accessibility, performance, visual regression, etc., testing, and of course, reusability and cost savings. So this means there will be multiple component libraries, each with a build system and tooling to help quickly build and iterate the project while reaping the benefits of maintaining that organizational consistency across things like branding and accessibility. But a good design system will also be flexible enough to support a variety of languages and techniques. So for example, the organization's property may be built using Drupal with a traditional Twig front end, but some of the properties could be built using a whole other technologies like WordPress or React. And we did an example of this in the Western University project, where the main project's built in Drupal and a sub-project for Western Law is built in React and Gatsby. So this, of course, means we need well-defined workflows to tie all of this together. So on the technical side, we need to be able to document the same components in the style guide that are being used in the properties. We need the component libraries and style guide for those components to be living, meaning they're updated whenever the components themselves are updated. And all of this across all properties supporting a variety of languages. So at the very least, this means managing and versioning packages. But beyond that, the organization itself will need some product workflows for updating documentation, for updating components across multiple languages, for notifying teams of those updates, and so on. These are the three key ingredients to a design system: component libraries, shared and reused across well-defined workflows, with living authoritative documentation in the style guide. And this is the Emulsify Design System. So first we have a style guide generator built using Gatsby. So here you can document pages and components using Markdown and MDX. It's also extendable to support other content sources that Gatsby supports, such as Drupal, WordPress, and Contentful. The Gatsby style guide has built-in support for viewing living Storybook components and built-in code block support for code and syntax highlighting. Also, it is extremely customizable as a Gatsby theme. And then, of course, the component library is powered via Storybook, so built to support multiple languages and with first-class support in Emulsify for Drupal and Twig. And because of the flexible tooling, the workflow can cover reuse across a multitude of languages and platforms, from powering an organization's component library via packages to any property's component library using a combination of shared packages and local components. But let's see this in action. And Brian's going to start sharing now.
All right. I've got a bunch of questions, Evan. If you wouldn't mind monitoring the chat and just writing down things as they come in so we can address them afterward, that'd be great. And a lot of the questions, I'm happy to say, will be answered, either already have been or will be as a part of this. Let's just dive in and we'll get to it. Okay, so in this demo, we're going to walk through, we have created 2 web properties under the same organization that will use shared organizational components and styles. The first is the Western University of Pennsylvania, and the second is the Western University of Pennsylvania Studio Arts College. The arts property will use some of the organizational components, but will also have some custom components and styles that are not shared by the overall Western U organization. And the first thing we did when we started this project was to create the components that would be shared by all of the Western U properties. We created one repository for the Twig components and a separate repository for the SAS files. Now that isn't strictly necessary in all situations. So if your organization only has one property or you don't need to separate them out like this, or in that case, you don't need to separate them out like this, or if your organization has 100% standardized on Twig and SAS, you can house all that together in a single repo. But the reason we're demoing with separate repositories is to show you how one organization can have properties built with any technology and still share everything possible between them. So for example, there could be a Drupal site and a React app, and as long as they both are configured to use SAS, they can share the SAS repository and only worry about creating high quality markup in their respective languages. And the point is that the pipeline is flexible to meet organizational needs. And we actually have a demo of this in our Emulsify-DS org on GitHub. The Western U law site is a Gatsby and React app that shares the SAS with our Drupal and Twig sites. We'll have links to all that later, but we definitely encourage you to check that stuff out. So here's what a section of our repositories look like. On the left, we have the Western Up Twig repository, and on the right, you'll see the Western Up SAS repo. We've chosen to structure them in an atomic design architecture, so you'll see corresponding files and directories on each side, like the colors and the event card. And here you'll notice that the SAS repo doesn't mirror the directory structure exactly because we didn't find it necessary to create folders that we knew would only contain one file in each. In the Twig repo, though, there's always at least 2 files, the Twig for the markup and the YAML for the component library data. So we went ahead and created each of those. Now, once those were created, we published them to NPM so that any current or future property can easily include them without having to recreate or copy and paste any markup or styles from the main organization. We simply yarn add or npm install the packages, and they're immediately ready to use. So this is the main Western U website. It's going to use the organization components and styles off the shelf with no customizations or additions. This means that the properties components folder is basically empty. The only file we have is a SAS file that says to import the main styles file from the Western Up SAS node module. So this gives us all of the styles from the organizational repo, but you'll see a comment online too that says we could import just the SAS files we need, like the colors or the buttons, for example. But in this case, we just wanted everything, so we kept it simple. Oh, I did check the comments real quick. And yes, if you double click on the slides, you'll actually see that bigger than the other images like of me and Evan, and you might prefer that anyway. Just minimize our faces. So one quick thing to note is that when we developed the initial organizational components, we wanted to work on them, all the various packages, but maintain our UI library workflow in Storybook. We had success using Yarn and npm link and Yarn workspaces for this. Learn is another option. Whatever tooling you choose, Webpack, our build tool, was able to handle the file from all the repositories with hot reloading to meet the expectations of a traditional development workflow. We're not going to go into detail on how to set these up because they're all a little bit different, and it's up to your team to decide what to use. But there are a few examples of tools that can help you out. And we actually do walk through how to use Yarn and npm link in our Emulsified documentation, which we'll link to in the slides later. So the SAS file in our component directory is pulling in the styles from the node module, but what about the markup? We just need to set up some configuration in 2 files to make this work. One for Storybook, our component library, and one for Drupal. This is a Webpack Config file for Storybook. And on line 35, you'll see a Twig section. And then if we zoom in on that, you'll see we're setting some namespaces. So atoms points to Western Up Twig 01-atoms directory in the node modules. And then molecules, organisms, and templates are all doing the same. This tells Storybook where to look for templates when we type something like @atoms/whatever. But Drupal needs to know that too. So in our themes info YAML file, we're configuring the namespaces for the components module. We're doing the same thing here. We're just pointing directly to the node module that we installed. So here's an example of our component library. We decided to separate our grayscale from our branding colors, but that's totally up to you how you want to display things in Storybook. Here's an example of a news card in a grid. And then here's our example homepage. Storybook does have the ability to pop this out into a new window without the Storybook Chrome. I find that very useful when developing things to make sure that my browser widths are what I expect. And then at the top here, you can see I have a nice clean hero with the page title over an image. And if I scroll down, you'll see the text with image component, and the card grid, and then the footer. Actually, before that, we have the big CTA at the bottom and then the footer. So that's the home page of the main Western U property. And I want to show you one more page, and that's the article content type. This is especially important because our arts property is actually going to use this out of the box. And this shows both that 100% consistency between properties is possible because they're sharing the exact same code through packaged components. And it's beginning to show part of the cost effectiveness of reusing components across multiple properties. Western Arts automatically gets this as another Drupal site in the project. The code's already been written and tested for them. So if we open up the article content type, we'll see a page title and the image and text. The sidebar has a basic CTA and upcoming events list. There's a basic card grid a little further down. And then finally another CTA in the body and then the footer. Now, so far, we've just been looking at the component library with static content. Let's switch over to the Drupal sites now and see how things compare. Here is the homepage in Drupal with that same big hero, text with image paragraph. And we do want to note that you're not restricted to any approach in Drupal. We used paragraphs, but Emulsify isn't opinionated. So then there's the upcoming event section using our card grid and the homepage CTA at the bottom right before the footer. On the left, we have the component library example with static content, and on the right is a Drupal site with dynamic content. I just put the same text and images in to show that they are 100% identical. Now, in this case, the Drupal site looks a little smaller, but that's just because the admin toolbar is visible at the top and the view, edit, delete tabs are placed right above the main content. If I were to log out, though, it would be identical, but that wouldn't really make it clear that one's the component library and one's Drupal. Now, here's the full article page, and it's showing the same thing. Now, let's take just a minute to show how we can document all of this in the style guide. We've been looking at the component library. Now we're going to switch over to the style guide. Now, as mentioned before, the style guide is powered by the Emulsify Gatsby theme. The Emulsify Gatsby theme provides a baseline of styles and functionality to produce the style guide quickly, but the tooling also makes it easy to quickly and fully customize. We built this custom Western U one in just a couple of hours. And this is an example of a welcome page, and you can see it has all the typical style guide page elements and navigation built in. Here's an example of a logo page. In the style guide, we use MDX for content. And if you're not familiar with MDX, it's just Markdown, except you get to write JSX in it, which comes with some really cool perks. One of those perks is shortcodes. So the dark section here is a simple shortcode in our Gatsby theme to show content on a contrasted background. Here's an example of that shortcode in usage in an MDX file. So whatever gets placed between the contrast wrapper shortcode element gets that contrasting wrapper treatment in the content region. And also, because we leverage Theme UI, which is a library for creating reusable components popular in the Gatsby community, we not only get API-based theming, which allows for very quick overrides from everything from colors to typography to component styles, all via a local config file. We also get support for modes built in. So you can see here, I've clicked on the dark mode button in the top right, and we have some nice dark mode styles based on the base colors in our local theme UI config. And of course, here is a component page. So the buttons you see are being pulled in via a Storybook component shortcode from our Storybook instance. These are the live authoritative components from our component library being shown in our style guide. Actually, I want to go over that again. This is the actual component from our component library being displayed in our style guide. It's not a screenshot. It's not a duplication. It's the actual code that runs our component library shown in the style guide. So this Storybook shortcode requires just the ID that Storybook creates for a given component, which is readily available in the UR, and the pattern's also pretty easy to memorize. It also allows for a height prop to be passed so that you can set the iframe height to any value. And then, of course, below our component, we have our code block with built-in syntax highlighting. This just works in the typical markdown way of surrounding any code block with backticks. And in doing so, the code will be highlighted automatically. We're using Prism.js, the Prism.js library for this, which is extendable and configurable to your needs in your style guide. Here's another example of a component page. Notice we've kept the Storybook component and code block pieces separate, and this just shows that you can organize your content any way you like. You could have pages with just the component display and some content, or with just code blocks. Here we have a component. Here we have a page with a component display, some other simple markdown content, in this case, just a heading, and then the code block. And the point is, you can organize your content however you like. And because of Gatsby's fantastic tooling and theme UI, we have a different syntax highlighter theme when in dark mode. And then finally, you may have noticed the tabs. This allows you to organize pages into sections and is done via two YAML front matter tags at the top. Tab for the tab name and tab order for where it should fall in the ordering. And this is a quick look at how to create documentation in the style guide. Now, let's dive into the Studio Arts property. This is a college in the Western U organization that should share some components and styles with the organization's main repo, with the main property, but also, because it's an arts college, wants to have some visual flexibility through new components or by customizing the organizational ones. Since we want to have access to the organizational components and styles, we run the exact same command we ran for the first property to include the Twig and Sass as node modules. The main properties component directory was pretty bare. If you remember, there was just the one file to import the styles. In this case, we have a number of custom components that are specific to the arts site. So we have directories for molecules, organisms, templates, and pages. We didn't need to add any new colors or base styling, so there's no base directory. We're using all the default button components and styles as well as other atoms, so we didn't need to add the atoms directory either. This allows us to keep the properties repository clean and easy to navigate. There's no duplication of the organizational components and styles because those are stored and documented elsewhere. We only have to worry about the code that's custom to this property. And since these components are specific to this property, we're putting the Twig, Sass, JavaScript, and YAML files all right next to each other. This is the same methodology that the old version of Emulsify and other component-driven development tools use. The Webpack config for this site is a little different because now we want to pull in organizational components from packages and our custom ones locally. It's actually really simple to do this though. We just add additional namespaces to the config files. So here you'll see that organisms is pointing to the node modules directory, while WA_organisms is pointing to the components directory of this property. This means that I can call any component from either location at any time. I just use the regular organisms namespace to pull from the organization's components, or WA_organisms to pull from the properties components. And you can namespace those however you want based on your needs. Actually, on a recent project that we're in the middle of now, we flipped that and decided that the upstream or the organization components would be namespaced, and that each property would just be unnamespaced. So it's up to you, however you want to do that. You can create unlimited namespaces depending on how you want to structure your component packages. So you could have more, like a campaigns component package that has all of your big splashy campaign related components that more than one of your sites will use, but not necessarily all of them. Or events related components that are needed by all, that are not needed by all of your brochureware sites, but the community focused ones all want. The possibilities are really endless here in terms of organization and reuse. And then in Drupal's info YAML file, we do the exact same thing. All we have to do is use the same namespace, and now Storybook and Drupal both know what to do when we call a component from any of the paths we've set up. So here's an example of a WA article for Western Arts article and for the Western Arts site. It uses a template from the organization's components. We know that because it's not prefixed with anything. And then it also uses molecules from the properties components, and then an organism from the organization. Now, this kind of mixing and matching components from different sources is a game changer across a large organization. And in Drupal, you just call the components you need when and where you need it. So here you can see the art quote paragraph type is using the art quote component from the arts property, and the card component is using the organization's basic card component. Now, back in our component library, something I didn't bring attention to is the fact that the Western Arts component library can show exactly what is helpful to its users. In this case, we're not showing any base or Adams components because we're not customizing any of them. We could show them, it's just a matter of indexing those stories for the Storybook instance. But in this case, it would just be clutter. You can go to the organization's Storybook instance, or better yet, use the style guide as a reference for whatever you need. Now, I did throw in the article from the main organization just to show how you could do that. Whoops, wrong way. Here you go. In the code base, we just have a template for the WA article, but in the stories.js file, we're telling it to show the organization's article as well. This is because we're going to set up a content type on this site to look and function identical to the main organization's article. But we're also going to have a custom WA article content type that has a different look and feel for different use cases. Here's a content hero that's a custom component to the arts property. And on the example homepage, you'll see that at the top first, though, there's a big splash hero. And then here's the content hero a little further down. We also had to create a new layout for this property. Its homepage was designed to be edge to edge with no padding or margin around the main content. All of our other pages had some sort of minimal padding, but our designer wanted something very different for this site. Here's a couple of pages in Drupal that show everything that. So the home page on the left is made up of entirely custom components specific to the arts property, while the article on the right is made up entirely of components from the organization's components repo. This last page is a fully built out WA article in Drupal. Now, if you're familiar with the organization's components, you would know that everything on this page is custom to the arts property, except the last item on the page, which is the card grid from the organization. Now, if we break this down, you'll see the code I referenced earlier, and that the art quote is coming from the WA_molecules namespace, which is the properties components, while each card in the grid, as well as the grid itself, is getting its markup from the molecules namespace, meaning the organization's components. So this just goes to show how any property in your organization can be built with common, or what we call organizational components and styles, their own completely custom components and styles, and or a combination of both. With the new Emulsify Design System toolchain, you're given everything you need to work in the way that makes the most sense for your organization and your projects. You could have projects that are fully customized. You could have projects that are pre-baked, capable of being spun up quickly to meet a cost-effective need. And that's the end of the demo section. We do have a few common questions that we get a lot, so we wanted to get those out of the way before we get to your specific questions from today. I'm going to dive right in, though. The first is, what is the current state of the project? Both the component library built with Storybook and the style guide built with Gatsby are completely usable in projects right now. We actually already transitioned one of our largest client component libraries, ithaca.edu, over to the new Emulsify. And this was a massive component library, and it really helped us work out a lot of kinks, because there's a lot of complex components in here, and it's all running smoothly now. So that's nice. And we're also in the process of helping Yale transition to using Emulsify as a design system across their organization. So these tools are ready for prime time right now. Go check them out. You might be thinking, I only have a single project. Does Emulsify still help me? No, I'm just kidding. Yes, of course it does. We've chosen to focus on the design system aspect for the new Emulsify because it's now flexible to meet that need. But the new Emulsify is also better than ever at addressing the needs of a single project built using component-driven development. You benefit from the speed, agility, and downright fun of developing with Storybook and Webpack as a build system. Evan is going to answer this next part. Can I have multiple style guides?
So yeah, the answer to this question is because the Gatsby theme that we use to create style guides, it just becomes its own repo wherever you want to put it. So you can actually build, will you go to the next slide, Brian? I think there's some info on that. Yeah. So you can actually build multiple style guides for like the organization and the properties. We've had clients before who it would have actually made sense to build a style guide just for a property because the property's brand was so large and they had sub projects. And but the key to style guide is that those have to be maintained. It's not like a component library where you're building things that automatically populate it. This is content that someone has to manage, create, and own over a large period of time. So there needs to be a need. It's not just a tool that you throw at a project and assume it will be successful. It will definitely be something that you know that property or that organization is ready to support and maintain. And it's not something that Brian and I would maintain as a at an agency. It's something that the client has to maintain, the organization themselves.
You might also be wondering if you can see a live demo somewhere. Yes, we have a lot. These are the Git repositories. These are all completely open source and public, so you can check this out anytime. The first two you see here, the Western University and Western Arts, are Drupal sites. The third, the Western Law site, is actually a Gatsby and React app consuming the SAS files. So all of them are sharing the same styles, but they're written using different markup languages, if you will. The Western Up Twig, Western Up SCSS, and the Western Up React repositories are just that. One holds the Twig components, one holds all the styles, and one holds the React components. And then the last one, the Western Identity, is our example Gatsby style guide. So that's, if you want to see how the style guide is put together, go there. We also do have these all published live places. Again, you can get the slides if you don't get to these right now. The slides are available, but you can actually click these and view live Drupal sites, a live Gatsby and React app, or live Storybook instances. All the stuff is live everywhere. Go look at it if you want to. Thank you, Joshua, for posting the slides link again in the chat. And everything is under the new Emulsified DS org on GitHub. So if you go here, you'll see everything. Yeah, it's just all here. So one thing to note is that the new Emulsified Design System, in this, we've broken things out into separate repos. So you can use the Emulsified Drupal project for a Storybook and Webpack-based component library in a Drupal project. And you can use the Emulsified Gatsby theme, the style guide, in any project, regardless of tech stack. Now, although they do share tool choices like Webpack, they're all installed and run separately based on the project needs. So you might notice that there is a WordPress theme and a Gatsby starter in the works. This is just the flexibility of the new system. We also have new documentation, freshly updated for this presentation. So hopefully it's all accurate at this moment. But we do encourage PRs. It's all open source. So if you find an issue or want to help document something that's not documented yet, create a PR. We would love some help getting all that documentation up to date. It includes, oh yeah, here's the docs page. So it includes the installation and upgrade instructions from the old version of Emulsify. It also includes walkthroughs on how to set up both your component libraries, your style guide, and how to use them together in a design system. And if you need more information, check out emulsify.info. We're going to stick around for some questions right now. We do have a little bit of time, but if you also want to hang out more, we're going to jump over to our virtual booth right after this. Here's the link. Evan's still got his slide up, so that's going to be there. In that same booth at 4 p.m. Central today, or 2100 UTC, Evan and I are going to be doing something stupid. I don't know who had this idea, but I literally have 10 bottles of hot sauce on my desk right now, and we're going to be participating in a version of Hot Ones where we eat hot sauce and answer questions about ourselves and Emulsify. I am not looking forward to it.
Hey, let's go through questions real quick because we had a lot. There's one that was high priority, and I hope you're still on here, Peter. He was asking any quick insight for mixed environments, like Drupal, PHP, and .NET Core, Microsoft. So there, number one, out of the gate, there's no magical solution that's going to make all those things work together, obviously. But one of the reasons that we have been thinking in this workflow process and breaking packages out are that I imagine, and I don't work in .NET and .NET Core and Microsoft, so I may be totally wrong in what I say, but I imagine that there are still things that can be shared between projects. So if you use like Sass, for instance, you may have heard when he was talking about it, but we shared that between like React projects and Drupal projects and things like that. So those projects have separate components. So I'm assuming you're talking about .NET Core like websites. Those are going to have obviously .NET Core components somewhere. They're not going to have Twig components, but you might be able to share some things between them. And really the key ingredient, I'm assuming if you're talking about, a design system across multiple properties, is having a style guide to where you can speak about how to build those things, even though they might have separate languages for things. One of the things that we've seen is people using CSS as the guide in the style guide, but there's actually multiple packages available. So there's a Sass package available. There's a static CSS package. There's CSS and JS solutions that are in their repos, but they document the main way to do it. They document sort of the authoritative code, and then they have those packages available. So hopefully that helps. And then Brian, do you want to go through your questions because they were probably earlier, and then we can cycle through mine?
Yeah, I think a lot of them were answered, so we'll answer them quickly. The first question was from Imo Sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. He said, "Is Storybook comparable to KSS?" And I think the answer is yes. It's kind of comparable to Storybook and Pattern Lab and
yeah, all KSS was a component library.
Okay. Option. So yes. Mario Hernandez asked if we're using Twig.js or a PHP version. How's the compatibility of Twig.js with Twig in Drupal?
I can address this.
Yeah, go for it.
That we definitely are using Twig.js in the new version. So we did notice differences in them, but like we said, we moved one of our largest component library projects over to the new system. Twig.js has a lot of traction around the project. There's a lot of people using it. It's very active. There's also a healthy competitor now in Twig, which is something that we are also looking into, which claims to have direct support for everything that Twig PHP has. So there's a healthy sort of JavaScript marketplace built up. That was one of the key ingredients. We weren't gonna make the change unless that existed, and it does.
Stuart Clark real quick asked, which by the way, hey Stuart, haven't seen you in a while. When y'all are referring, I'm gonna read this quote. When y'all, maybe you should, you got the more Southern, anyway. When y'all are referring to component library, are y'all talking about, I'm starting to get a draw, talking decoupled JS components or Drupal components? And when we talk about component library, we're not actually talking about either. The component library is just like the house that holds your components. The components can be written in any kind of markup. They could be JS components, they could be Drupal, Twig components, they could be React components, they could be anything. The component library is just the tool that houses your visual components. So here we go. He also asked if anybody's seen component libraries with access to live data via JSON API. I haven't done anything like that. Evan, do you have any insight to that? Can the component library use?
I was trying to think about a question. What was it?
Can the component library access live data like through JSON API? Like if Drupal exports a JSON API feed, can you consume that and use that?
Yeah, and actually this answer is someone else was at least talking about this if they didn't have a question. So there are live examples of Storybook pulling data from other sources, including automated sources like Faker and things like that. That's actually on my to-do list to set up a demo to do, because we're interested in that as well, just for quickly creating dummy data that will cover a whole lot of scenarios for visual regression testing and things like that. So yes, that is something that can happen in these environments. I haven't done it myself, so I can't really speak real accurately to it yet, but yeah. So Stuart Clark said this is specifically real data, though. It doesn't matter. It's as long as there's a data source that can be pulled from. So like the data in our instance of Emulsified Drupal, for example, is YAML data that just gets parsed to JSON. So you can actually write JSON data, you can write YAML data. And it can read from both of those. So if it expects to pull YAML data from somewhere, it can. If it expects to pull JSON data from somewhere, it can. You could populate your components with live data by using JSON API.
And then the last one I had written down, I think, was Nathan Vexler asked, do you have any suggestions for design system strategy for large organizations who don't want to or can't enforce a CMS or even a JS library, as they might want to enable both Vue and React and jQuery? Hopefully we showed you examples of that, or check out the repos. But yeah, it's all possible. You just create your different languages in different places. And the way we like to do it is package those into repositories and into installable packages, so that new Vue sites can use your Vue components, new React sites can use your React components, and you can just share those things across those projects. And you're just maintaining one component library for each language. And then whatever site, whichever one it wants to use, it just chooses to use those components.
Yeah, and I'll add to that and say those components will still be written separately. So if your organization has to support multiple versions of components, multiple languages, I'm sorry, it's not like those are tied together. Like there's not anything that's making React spit out Twig or vice versa or anything like that. So you will still be supporting multiple languages. The key is to share as much as possible, or to align the efforts across as many teams as possible. So you may have React components and Vue components, but you could have a single source of truth component that maybe is the markup that those are supposed to produce, and that's what gets put into the style guide by default. Carbon Design System is actually a really good example of this. If you've looked into their, this is IBM's design system. They sort of set the precedent for how to share. They share a language, like I think 6 or 7 languages probably of components, and share like Sass between them and static CSS and things like that. So it's a good kind of reverse engineer if you go look at their code base to see how they handle that. They make it available open source.
Cool. That was my last question.
So yeah, I'll keep going with these. The way this works, if you're not familiar, is we can stay on as long as we need. So I'll keep going through the questions that I have, which a few of these already got answered. One was an excellent question. I don't know if this person's still on here, but combining custom and global components, is that authors? Is it only product owners and developers who know what is under the hood? So yes, that is correct. So if I'm reading this right, the way that he is tying those things together in the code base is still in a single Drupal site. So on the Western Arts site, for example, in the CMS, when you're creating content, you don't care about that part at all. You just create the article that you need to create, or the paragraph that you need to create, or whatever thing you're creating on the Drupal side that makes sense as a content author. And in in the code, those things are using organization templates or local templates. So that's a code decision. Good question. What documentation do you create to map component library to page layouts? Allowable components, content strategy, and intent. So I believe this is the style guide that we were referring to. I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding this question, but to document sort of the overarching usage of the design system, that would go in the style guide. If you are talking about specific usage to a project, Storybook also has documentation tools. They have add-ons where you can put code notes or notes. They also have a whole docs section that you can add in that uses MDX as well, that's built into the Storybook UI that you could use. So you can actually do that one of two ways depending on the need. I wasn't sure what that question was asking. I'm using the old Emulsify with Pattern Lab. What reasons are there to upgrade, or is this a case of it's not broke, don't fix it? So you will definitely want to upgrade there. We are not maintaining the old version of Emulsify. If someone in the community would like to, that's fine. We'll make it available. But we have stopped maintaining that for a while now. And there are definitely packages out of date. I don't think that it's anything that would threaten your live scenario because it's all, you know, a static site generator. But it's things that you would want to keep updated, and you would then be using a new version of Emulsify locally, and so you probably want to upgrade. That's why we put upgrade path in the documentation, because it's kind of something we wanted to sunset the old version. Is there a beginner intro for devs somewhere? So the documentation, obviously, we've tried to make that a good intro, but if you're looking for an intro into how to build an Emulsify, we've started putting out a blog series on 4kitchens.com about this. There's one that's a 4-part series that I think the first 2 have released, and the next 2 should be coming soon, about how to build using Storybook, kind of going from start to kind of a complete page walkthrough. Shouldn't a design system also include tone of voice, content strategy, offline styles, etc.? Yes. Yeah, those are things that a design system should include, and that's what goes into the style guide. That's the problem the style guide is solving. Also, where's the organization for your folders coming from? I think somebody else answered this in the chat, but atomic design, the atoms, molecules, etc. Sorry if you were new to that. I don't think we mentioned that's atomic design structure. We did not create that. It's something that Brad Frost created, who we spoke about earlier. So if you want to look that up, again, atomic design is the name of that, and it's just an organizational pattern for maintaining components as they scale. And any recommendations on the best way to use React components inside of Twig page templates inside of Storybook? I don't think that that's possible. I might be wrong. We have not tried that. So when we build React components, we build those separately, house them separately. We don't try and pull them into Twig or vice versa. And that's all the questions that I had.
There was one more question from Brian Butler. Are there any issues with sub-theming a theme that leverages Emulsify? And I wanted to answer this because we don't actually do sub-theming, at least at 4Kitchens. We haven't really done sub-theming, like traditional sub-theming in Drupal for years now. And the reason is because since you have access to the components from the main property, and you can create custom ones, if you want the main, the ones from the organization, you just include those and use those. And if you need to change something like colors or something, you can just kind of override that by setting a new variable or something locally. But we haven't really done sub-theming like we used to on any Drupal 8 site at all, actually, that I can remember. Evan, do you have any more thoughts on that?
I have thoughts on it, and I don't want to, this might be, unfortunately, this is where I wish I could actually have a conversation, because it all depends on your scenario. But in the scenarios where we've typically used sub-theming in the past, it's been that the theme provided a lot of functionality that you want to inherit. It's either that or the theme provides a lot of like design that you want to inherit. And that problem is solved more elegantly, in my opinion, in putting packages separately. So if you want to design to be inherited in multiple places, package those things. Don't wrap it into a Drupal situation. Do it in a way that can be shared inside or outside of Drupal. But if you have functionality you want to use that you write into your theme, what we typically do on projects in that case is put that into modules as opposed to tied to the theme. But again, that's situational, and you might have a situation that justified subtheming. We don't offer Emulsify as a subtheme.
Great. I think that's all the questions. We are going to jump over to our booth now. Please fill out the survey. It's linked, it's pinned to the top of the chat from Joshua Fernandez. So please fill out that survey. Let us know what you thought, if there's anything we can improve, or just comment that you think I'm better looking than Evan.
Thank you all so much. We appreciate your time and the activity in the chat. That was great. Bye.
Bye.